The night was heavy with silence. Sandra Bullock sat on the edge of her wide bed, staring at the floor as though the carpet might whisper answers she had been waiting for. Outside, Los Angeles lights glittered like 1,000 promises she no longer believed in. Inside her heart, though, there was only weight. Her partner had just left after another argument. The words he had thrown at her still rang in her ears, words that had cut through her confidence like sharp glass. He was not violent with his hands, but he had found another way to wound her. Each time, he reminded her she was not enough. Each time, he mocked her when she cried. Each time, he made her feel like she was living in his shadow. She lost a little more of herself. Sandra had worked so hard for her career. She had made people laugh, cry, and hope through her movies. Millions admired her strength, her charm, her kindness. But behind closed doors, she felt invisible. Her laughter was fading. The woman who once believed in happy endings now doubted if love was ever real. It was on one of those long, lonely nights that she received a message from someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Keanu Reeves. The message was simple. "Hey, are you doing okay? I was thinking about you." She froze, her fingers hovering over the screen. Her chest tightened, not in fear, but in surprise. Of all the people who could reach out, it was Keanu. They had shared something once, not romance, but a connection during the days of filming. She remembered how gentle he had been, how he listened more than he spoke, how his quiet presence brought calm even in chaos. For years, she had wondered why she felt different around him. And now, just when her life was cracking, his name appeared like a light in the dark. She typed back, "Not really, but thank you for asking." Within minutes, her phone buzzed again. "Want to talk? I can come by." No pressure. Sandra hesitated. She glanced at the empty glass on her bedside table, the untouched dinner downstairs, the silence pressing on her chest. A part of her wanted to say no, to stay in the shadows where no one could see her brokenness. But another part whispered, maybe tonight she should let someone in. "Okay," she typed. Just for a little while. When Keanu arrived, he didn't come with flowers or grand gestures. He simply brought himself, in his quiet black jacket and calm eyes that carried both sadness and kindness. He stepped into her house, not as a savior, but as a friend. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said softly. "I'll just sit here." And so they sat, the people in silence. Two souls who understood that sometimes the greatest comfort is not in words, but in presence. Minutes turned to hours. Sandra finally spoke, her voice trembling like glass about to break. She told him about the arguments, the loneliness, the way she felt trapped in a toxic love that drained her spirit. She admitted how tired she was of pretending to the world that everything was fine. Keanu listened. Not once did he interrupt. Not once did he make her feel judged. When she finished, he simply said, "You don't deserve to feel this way. Real love is not about pain. It's about peace. And you deserve peace." His words struck something deep inside her. For years, she had accepted unhappiness as normal, thinking maybe this was what relationships were supposed to be. But hearing him say she deserved peace made her realize she had forgotten her worth. That night, for the first time in a long time, Sandra slept without tears on her pillow. Yet this was only the beginning. She didn't know that her journey with Keanu would not just help her heal, but would also test her in ways she never imagined. Because toxic love doesn't let go easily. And true love, when it appears, demands courage. The next morning, Sandra woke with an unusual calm. The sun filtered through her curtains, soft and golden, as if the world itself was offering her a fresh start. For the first time in months, she hadn't been woken by shouting or by the sound of a door slamming shut. Instead, she carried the quiet memory of Keanu sitting beside her, his steady voice telling her she deserved peace. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stared out the kitchen window. The city below looked the same, busy and restless, but inside her something was shifting. Still, the voice of doubt lingered. Her partner had always told her she would be nothing without him. What if that was true? What if she left and the world turned its back on her? Later that day, her phone buzzed again. It was Keanu. "Just checking in. How are you feeling?" She hesitated before replying. She didn't want to seem weak. She didn't want to burden him. But she remembered the calmness of his presence, and she typed back, "A little better. Thank you." Seconds later, another message. "Want to get some air? Sometimes a walk clears the mind." She found herself saying yes. They met at a quiet park, away from cameras and crowds. Keanu had chosen a spot with winding paths and tall trees, a place where no one cared who they were. Sandra wore simple jeans and a sweater, hoping to blend in. When she saw him waiting near the fountain, something inside her softened. He wasn't polished for the spotlight. He was just himself, humble and unguarded. As they walked, Sandra opened up again. She spoke about her fears of leaving, of being alone, of disappointing the public image she had spent years building. Her words spilled out like water from a broken dam. "I feel like I'm stuck in a cage," she admitted. "People think I'm strong, but inside I feel trapped and small. Every time I think of leaving, I hear his voice telling me I'm worthless." Keanu stopped and looked at her with steady eyes. "You are not worthless. You are one of the strongest people I've ever met. Strength isn't about pretending you'll find. It's about facing the truth, even when it hurts." His words stayed with her as they kept walking. She realized he wasn't trying to rescue her. He wasn't pushing her to make a decision. He was simply reminding her of who she really was. Yet the shadows of her toxic relationship followed her home. That night, her partner returned, his mood sharp and unpredictable. He noticed the change in her, how her eyes seemed brighter, how her voice carried a little more steadiness. And he didn't like it. "Who were you with today?" he demanded, suspicion dripping from his tone. Sandra froze. Should she lie? Should she admit she had spent the afternoon walking with an old friend? She chose silence, but silence was its own answer. His anger rose. Harsh words filled the room, accusations she hadn't earned, threats she didn't deserve. When he finally stormed out, leaving her shaken, she sat alone in the dim light, her hands trembling. For years, she had accepted this as normal. But now, Keanu's words echoed inside her. "You deserve peace." The next morning, she called him. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "Keanu, what if I'm too scared to leave?" There was a pause on the line. Then he said gently, "Then don't think about leaving yet. Think about living, one step at a time. Start by remembering what makes you happy. I'll help you with that." True to his word, he began showing up for her in quiet ways. Some days it was a walk. Other days it was sitting with her while she read scripts. Once, he even brought her a small notebook. On the first page, he had written, "Things that make Sandra smile." She laughed through her tears when she saw it, and slowly, she began filling the pages. But the closer she grew to Keanu, the more dangerous her toxic relationship became. Her partner noticed every change, every flicker of strength, and his control grew sharper. Sandra was caught between two worlds, the world of fear she had known for so long, and the world of freedom Keanu was gently guiding her toward. And deep down, she knew she couldn't live between them forever. One night would come when she would be forced to choose. The weeks that followed were like walking onto different roads at the same time. One road was heavy and dark, the road of her toxic relationship, filled with fear, silence, and sharp words that cut her down. The other road was lighter, almost fragile, but alive with hope. It was the road she walked whenever Keanu was near, when his quiet kindness reminded her she was more than someone else's possession. Sandra tried to hide this fragile light from her partner, but shadows always find cracks. One evening, after a long day of shooting, she returned home and found him waiting. His eyes were sharp, his tone colder than usual. "You're different," he said. "You think I don't see it. Who is it?" Her stomach tightened. She shook her head. "No one. I've just been thinking about my life." But lies were useless. He stepped closer, his voice rising. "Don't play games with me. I know when you're lying. You've been with someone." Fear pulsed through her. She didn't dare say Keanu's name. She didn't dare give him that target. So she stayed silent, and silence again became her answer. That night, she locked herself in the bathroom just to breathe. She stared at her reflection, her hands pressed to the sink, her heart pounding. The woman looking back at her seemed tired, worn, but in her eyes was something new, a spark that hadn't been there before. Keanu's voice echoed in her memory, "You deserve peace." The next morning, she found herself at a small diner across the city. Keanu was already there, sitting in the corner booth, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. When he saw her, he stood, not with dramatic gestures, but with quiet respect. As though her presence mattered, she slid into the booth, and for a while, they didn't speak. She just let the silence calm her. Then, in a whisper, she confessed, "He knows something's changed. I'm afraid of what he might do." Keanu's jaw tightened, though his voice stayed soft. "You don't have to face this alone. You've carried too much on your own already, But what if I leave and I can't handle it? What if he's right? What if I am nothing without him? Keanu leaned forward, his eyes steady. You are not nothing. You're Sandra Bullock. You've built a life with your own strength. You've brought light to millions. Don't let one person's darkness define you. Her eyes filled with tears. No one had spoken to her like that in years. No one had believed in her the way he did. Days turned into nights, and their bond deepened. Keanu didn't try to fix her. He simply stood by her. One evening, he invited her to a charity event he was quietly supporting. It wasn't glamorous or filled with cameras. It was a shelter for children who had lost their families. Sandra watched as Keanu knelt to tie a little boy's shoelaces, as he laughed softly with a group of girls showing him their drawings, as he listened to the stories of the staff without once turning the focus on himself. Something in her shifted that night. She saw not just kindness, but consistency. He was the same man in private as he was in public, and for the first time, she let herself imagine what life could look like if she chose love that healed instead of love. That hurt but toxic love doesn't fade quietly. Her partner grew restless, controlling every detail of her day, demanding explanations for every minute she was away. The tension wrapped around her like chains. One night, he confronted her with venom in his words. I know it's him. Don't think you can replace me with that quiet fool. You'll regret it if you try. His warning left her shaken, but it also left her angry. That night, she called Keanu. Her voice was trembling but determined. I don't know how much longer I can live like this, she whispered. And for the first time, he said words that would change everything. Then let me help you find your way out. His tone wasn't forceful. It wasn't demanding. It was steady, like a hand reaching into the dark. Sandra closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Part of her was terrified. Part of her was relieved. But most of all, part of her finally felt hope. And hope was dangerous to the cage she had been trapped in. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Sandra's partner had grown more suspicious, and his temper lingered just beneath the surface. Every question he asked carried a hidden threat. Every glance felt like a warning. She knew he was watching her closely, and the fear was constant. Yet in the middle of that fear, Keanu's presence became her anchor. He never pressured her to make a decision. Instead, he gave her space to breathe. Some nights, he would call just to read her a passage from a book he loved. Other nights, he would send her a quiet message. You're not alone tonight. I'm here. Those little reminders gave her the strength to keep going. But strength and fear often collided. One evening, her partner returned home furious. He had seen a photo in the tabloids of Sandra standing near Keanu at the children's shelter. The picture wasn't even romantic, it simply showed them in the same frame, but to her partner. It was enough. You embarrassed me, he shouted. You made me look like a fool. Do you know what people are saying? That you're happier with him. Do you deny it? Sandra's heart pounded. Her throat was dry. For years, she had always chosen silence, hoping it would protect her. But this time, something inside her cracked open. Yes, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I am happier with him. Because with him, I'm not afraid. The words hung in the air like fire. His face turned cold. He didn't lash out physically, but the venom in his eyes told her enough. That night, she packed a small bag, just a few clothes, her phone, and the notebook Keanu had given her. She left the mansion quietly, her hands shaking on the steering wheel as she drove away. She didn't go to a hotel. She went to Keanu's modest home tucked away in the hills, a place far removed from Hollywood's noise. When he opened the door and saw her standing there, tears streaking her face, he didn't ask questions. He just stepped aside and whispered, "You're safe here," for the first time in years. She felt the weight of her cage lifting. In the days that followed, she stayed with him. Mornings were quiet, filled with coffee on the balcony and long talks about life. Evenings were gentle, sometimes filled with laughter, sometimes filled with silence. She began to rediscover herself, piece by piece, but the past doesn't let go so easily. One night, her phone buzzed with a message from her partner. You think you can run from me? This isn't over. Her hands trembled as she showed Keanu the message. He read it carefully, his eyes steady. This is fear talking, he said softly. Fear that he's losing control. But you've already taken the hardest step, walking away. Still, Sandra couldn't shake the unease. What if he tried to ruin her career? What if he spread lies? What if the world turned against her? Keanu reached across the table and took her hand, his voice calm. Let the world say what it wants. People who truly know you will see the truth, and I will stand beside you, no matter what storm comes." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of a promise. A few days later, Sandra received a script for a new film. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to feel excited about her work. As she read through the pages, Keanu watched her with quiet admiration. "You're glowing," he said gently. "This is the real you. The world needs her back." Slowly, Sandra began to believe she could rebuild. She started laughing more, sleeping better, remembering the woman she used to be before the shadows of control and fear. But deep inside, she knew the story wasn't finished. Her partner wasn't done. And when people like him feel power slipping, they fight harder, and they fight dirty. A storm was coming, and both she and Keanu would need more strength than ever to face it. The calm that Sandra had found in Keanu's home felt fragile, like glass. For a few weeks, she lived in a bubble of peace she hadn't known in years. She cooked simple meals, laughed at small things, and sometimes just sat with Keanu in silence, letting her heart heal. But the peace never lasted long. Her partner's shadow lingered over her like a storm cloud. One morning, as she scrolled through her phone, she saw the first headline: "Sandra Bullock leaves longtime partner amid rumors of affair with Keanu Reeves." Her chest tightened. Her hands trembled as she clicked on the article. There were photos of her and Keanu walking together in the park, sitting side by side at the shelter, even blurry images of her entering his home. The words in the article twisted the truth, painting her as reckless, selfish, even unfaithful. Sandra felt the air drain from her lungs. "They're going to destroy me," she whispered. Keanu, sitting across from her, read the headline quietly. His face was calm, but his eyes were serious. "Let them talk," he said. "The truth will outlast the noise. You don't have to explain your worth to people who only see headlines." But it wasn't just headlines. Within hours, her phone lit up with messages from friends, from her agent, from people asking if the rumors were true. Some messages carried concern, others carried judgment. Her partner had done exactly what she feared. He had twisted the story to make himself the victim and her the villain. That night, Sandra broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she sat on Keanu's couch, her voice breaking. "Maybe I made a mistake leaving. Maybe I should have stayed quiet, kept pretending. This is too much. I can't handle the whole world turning against me." Keanu sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers. "Listen to me," he said softly, but firmly. "You are not defined by his lies or by the headlines. You left because you were brave. You left because you chose yourself. Don't let fear convince you that you did the wrong thing." His voice steadied her, though the storm outside still raged. A few days later, Sandra received an invitation to a film gala. She wanted to decline, to stay hidden, but Keanu encouraged her. "You don't have to let fear decide for you," he said. "Walk in there with your head high. Show them the truth of who you are." And so she went. Cameras flashed as soon as she arrived. Whispers filled the air, some cruel, some curious. Her partner was there too, smirking from across the room, surrounded by people who believed his version of the story. Sandra's single quotes as heart pounded. But then, Keanu appeared by her side. He didn't hold her hand for the cameras, didn't make a scene. Instead, he stood with her quietly, his presence steady like a shield. The whispers grew louder. People stared, but Keanu leaned close and whispered, "Breathe. You're not alone. Let them see the woman who refuses to break." And so she did. She walked into that gala with her shoulders straight and her chin lifted, even as her heart raced. Every flash of the camera felt like fire, but with Keanu beside her, she didn't crumble. Yet as the night went on, her partner made his move. He approached her, his smile sharp, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Enjoy your moment," he sneered. "But remember, I can ruin you any time I want." His words chilled her. But before fear could take over, Keanu stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She's not yours to control anymore. Not here. Not ever again." The tension between them was electric. Her partner glared, his pride wounded. But he backed away, unwilling to make a public scene. Sandra's chest rose and fell, her body trembling. She looked at Keanu, and in that moment, she knew something with absolute clarity. He wasn't just a friend standing by her side. He was the man who truly saw her, respected her, and believed in her when she had forgotten how to believe in herself. But storms don't end with one confrontation. Her partner was not done. He was planning something bigger, something that would push Sandra to her breaking point. And when that moment came, She would have to decide, would she keep running from fear, or would she finally claim the life and love she deserved? Asterisk, the night after the gala, Sandra couldn't sleep. She sat by the window in Keanu's home, staring at the quiet hills outside. The world felt heavy on her shoulders, the lies in the headlines, the whispers in Hollywood, and the shadow of her partner's threats. Fear still wrapped around her, but deep inside, something new had taken root. It was small, but it was steady. It was the belief that maybe, just maybe, she was strong enough to fight back. The storm came sooner than expected. The next morning, another article hit the media. This time, it wasn't just whispers of rumors. It was a cruel attack, full of twisted stories about her past, her character, her career. Her partner had given exclusive details to the press, painting her as unstable, disloyal, and selfish. The words were poison, designed to break her. When Sandra read it, she felt her chest tighten. Her hands shook as she whispered, "He's going to ruin me. This is it." But Keanu took the article from her hands and set it aside. He looked at her with calm, unwavering eyes. "He can't ruin you. Lies don't last. Truth always comes through, but only if you stand in it. And if I can't?" she asked, her voice cracking. He reached out and held her hand. "Then I'll stand with you until you can." That afternoon, Sandra made a decision. Instead of hiding, she called a press conference. Her agent was nervous. Her team warned her against it. But she knew it was the only way to reclaim her voice. When the cameras rolled, the world expected a broken woman, full of excuses. But what they saw was Sandra, steady and raw. Her voice shaking at first, but growing stronger with each word. "For years," she said, "I lived in a relationship that drained me of who I was. I stayed silent because I thought silence was safer. But silence only gave power to the lies. Today, I'm choosing truth. I walked away because I deserve peace, respect, and kindness. And I want every person who feels trapped in fear to know walking away is not weakness. It's courage." The room was silent. Flashes of cameras filled the space, but no one interrupted. Sandra's words hung in the air, powerful and unshakable. When she stepped down from the podium, Keanu was waiting. The look in his eyes said everything: pride, respect, and something deeper that words could never hold. That night, the world began to shift. Not everyone believed her at once. Some still clung to the rumors. But many people saw her courage, her honesty, and they rallied around her. Messages poured in from fans, from strangers, from others who had walked through toxic love and found the strength to leave. And through it all, Keanu was by her side, not as her shield, not as her savior, but as her partner. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Sandra turned to him. Her voice was soft, almost afraid. "You've given me so much strength. But why? Why me?" Keanu smiled faintly, his eyes on the horizon. "Because I've seen your heart. I've seen your kindness, even when no one was watching. And I believe in love that doesn't hurt. Love that heals. That's what you deserve." Tears filled her eyes, but they were not tears of fear this time. They were tears of freedom, of gratitude, of love. She reached for his hand, and for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future not defined by fear, but by hope. The journey had been long. The storms had been heavy. But standing beside Keanu, Sandra finally knew the truth. True love doesn't demand chains. It gives wings. And with that truth, she stepped into a new chapter of her life, stronger, freer, and finally ready to love without fear.